So last night was the second part of the first Democratic debate. The candidates over my left shoulder were the ones who participated in this debate. We have Joe Biden, Andrew Yang, Kamala Harris, Michael Bennet, Pete Buttigieg, Marianne Williamson, Eric Swalwell, John Hickenlooper, Bernie Sanders, and Kirsten Gillibrand. I did not like this debate as much as the first one. I'm not sure I liked the first debate at all, but I definitely disliked this one more because it was just really annoying. It was sloppier. People were talking over each other. The questions were also shitty, just like, the debate that happened the night before. But just overall, it felt sloppier to me. Now, I want to give you the winners and the losers and the people who were neither winners nor losers. They just kind of were there, and they didn't help themselves or hurt themselves. First, let's go to the losers. I would say Mike Bennet is a loser because he was all over the place in terms of the arguments he was making. He made some points that were really shitty and centrist and dumb. Going after Bernie on Medicare for All, he fell massively flat there. But then he also kind of clipped Joe Biden on a tax deal that he had made with Mitch McConnell when Joe Biden tried to say it was a good deal. That was his only good moment, Bennett's only good moment. Overall, he honestly just sounds like a reformed frat boy. He seemed like a fish out of water, and he doesn't really have much appeal. He's wasting his time. He went nowhere in this debate, and he'll probably have to drop out soon. I retract that. I don't know how long these people are going to stay in, but it's going to be clear that a lot of them have zero chance very soon. Another loser, and this one I'm really saddened by, particularly because I made the bold prediction that he would perform well, and he would perform so well that he would get a bump in the polls. Andrew Yang. He did not perform well at all. Now, Andrew Yang today has come out and said they literally had my mic cut off for most of the night, so the reason you heard from me the least is because when I was trying to interject, nobody could hear me because my mic was off. That's what he's claiming today. Is that true? I have no idea. But what I do know is, mic on or off, even the few times that he spoke, he didn't do well. So this was a disastrously wrong prediction from yours truly, and now I'm owning up to it. He was definitely one of the losers of the night. Then we have the breakfast cereal, John Hickenlooper. He was exactly as expected. He was really boring and awkward with his weird smile. It took him a long time to say things, and when he did actually say things, they were really terrible because they were saying what we can't do, not what we can do, and then he tried to brag about his own record as the governor of Colorado, and he said dumb shit like, we had almost near universal health coverage because of me. Bragging about near universal health coverage is not something to brag about, because what you're saying is I couldn't get everybody covered. Like, all the people that are not covered, kind of important. So, you could argue now in the U.S., we almost have universal health coverage. What? There are like 30 million or 40 million people who are uninsured, but there's like 330 million people in the country. So we're near universal coverage. That's not a good point, dude. You look like a dickhead because you are. So Hickenlooper shit the bed. Then here are the two biggest losers in my opinion. Eric Swalwell is one of the top losers because he definitely has like this really high opinion of himself and he thinks he's going to make a run at this thing. But every time he spoke, I was cringing. He's really hokey and he's really corny and he's not very personable. And he had these like really overly planned out one-liners that he tried to plant throughout the night, and it was so obvious that they were planted, and he had this look on his face after he said them like he nailed it, but the audience was like, not so much there, fella. One of them was, we're gonna break up with Russia and get back with NATO! And everybody's like, So he was one of the biggest losers. And then the biggest loser by far and away was Joe Biden. He got his ass handed to him on a silver platter. He was just owned repeatedly over and over and over. Bernie owned him. Kamala owned him. And even Michael Bennett, frat boy Michael Bennett owned him. That is so sad. In between watching Animal House and American Psycho, which are Michael Bennett's two favorite movies, he owned Joe Biden. When you get owned by Michael Bennett, come on, son, wrap it up. So Biden was the biggest loser. So much so to the point that I will declare it right now. Biden's candidacy is over. It's dead in the water. He will not recover from this. And what did I tell you in advance? I told you that Joe Biden is a very good debater one-on-one with Republicans. Why did I say that? He eviscerated Sarah Palin, and he eviscerated Paul Ryan in legendary fashion. But what else did I tell you? He's not good in Democratic primary debates. Why? He's run 36 times prior to this to try to become president, and he lost every time, and he didn't even do well in any of the primaries. He was considered a favorite going to almost all the races that he was in, and then he flamed out super quickly. So when you put him on stage, and he's like a milquetoast centrist from the 1980s, and he's surrounded by monsters, he's going to get eaten alive, and he can't defend his long-ass record because there's a lot of sketchy shit in his record. I like how one of the candidates, I forget who it was, brought up that, Biden and Obama were responsible for deporting 3 million people, and he had no response. He just couldn't respond. He looked like a deer in headlights. He was like, because he was just finished talking about, saying something positive about immigrants or whatever, and somebody pounced, and he was like, fuck, why am I up here? It looked like it was past his bedtime all night. So definitely the biggest loser. Now, here's who didn't help themselves or hurt themselves. Now, I have feelings on how these people did, but I don't think that they're going to go in either direction in the polls. Marianne Williamson, nobody knew who the fuck she was going into the debate. Now, everybody knows who she is, but she's more of a meme than anything else. She seems like, like an old school hippie, basically, who made her way on the presidential stage, and she says stuff like, I'm all about love, bro. The only thing that could drive out love is hate. The only thing that could drive out hate is love, and I'm here to bring love. And then, she was talking about, we don't just need healthcare plans, we need wellness plans or some shit, and talking about how the only problem isn't just our healthcare system, it's also the food system, it's also the chemicals. I feel like she was this close to throwing some anti-vax shit out there in the middle of the debate. So she was a fascinating character. Every now and then she said something that makes sense, but by and large, she just strikes me as like a very hippy-dippy kind of character. And she has no chance. She has absolutely no chance. But at least now they know her now, and she made a lot of people laugh, and she made a lot of people smile, so I don't think she really hurt herself, because she was already at like 1% anyway, so she'll probably just remain at 1%, and now people will just be more amused by her and happy that they know who she is. And then we have Kirsten Gillibrand, I don't think helped herself or hurt herself. Now, at the beginning of the debate, I would have said for sure she's hurting herself. Why? Because she was the queen of interrupting through that debate. She would try to jump in time and time and time again, and it would always be awkward, and it would always sound desperate. And like every time she talked, she sounded desperate. Now, the reason why, though, ultimately, I don't think she hurt herself is because towards the end of the debate, when she kind of calmed down on the interrupting, and she actually started, saying stuff, she made sense. She said things that were perfectly reasonable. Now, is she a faker? Yes. She absolutely is a faker. Her record is very centrist, almost across the board. But she tried to portray herself as more of the Bernie Sanders variety and from the Bernie Sanders wing. And when she actually calmed down and stopped interrupting people, she said a few things that were like, oh, wow, that's a good point. She kept bringing up corruption, for example, and she talked about her plan on paid family leave, for example. I think she was the only one on stage to bring that up. And she talked about how her record is literally the most anti-Trump of everybody on stage, which, by the way, that's actually true. She made a point of, like, voting against every single appointment in his administration and stuff like that. So, while she was very annoying and she was interrupting people nonstop early on, by the end, she sort of redeemed herself, so I don't think she hurt herself or helped herself. She's just kind of coasting here. Now, she needs to help herself because she's so low in the polls, but she didn't do that, but I don't think she hurt herself. Again, this is all just my opinion. You can take it with a grain of salt. I'm sure many of you disagree with my overall breakdown here. Now, let's get to the winners. The first winner, Buttigieg. Now, I don't like Pete Buttigieg. In fact, I despise Pete Buttigieg. That was one of my tweets last night. I was like, I can't stand this guy. He's such a fucking fake, bullshitting politician who's playing a role right now. He's doing his Obama impersonation. That's the only reason he's on stage. And by the way, Buttigieg does a much better Obama impersonation than Beto. Beto is useless. Beto's done. Beto imploded last night. Buttigieg is hanging in there with his fake Obama impression, because every now and then he said some stuff that I know because I can tap into the mind of like the relatively apolitical centrist voter who doesn't know that much. And they would look at a guy like Buttigieg and go, oh, he seems very presidential and very well put together. So if you're one of those voters who's inclined to just look at surface bullshit, you're going to like Buttigieg. And I think that there are enough people who fit that description to say that Buttigieg is still kind of in this race. He kind of has forced himself to be taken seriously. Again, even though I despise him with a burning passion. He's doing his little tap dance of like kind of repping centrism, but putting enough of a veneer of faux progressivism over it where he's not like totally imploded. So I think he did perform well in this debate. I know some people disagree with me on that. But I always try my best to kind of get outside of just my own narrow perspective and try to see what I think certain kinds of voters would think of this guy. And I'll tell you what, for every person who hates him out there, there's somebody who likes him. So I think he did pretty well in this debate, unfortunately, because oftentimes he says nothing of substance. Now, the next winner is Bernie. However, Bernie did not spike the football in the end zone. You know, he pulled a Tulsi a little bit here. And what I mean by that is, just like with Tulsi Gabbard yesterday, Tulsi started super slow, and then she picked it up by the end. That is pretty much exactly what happened with Bernie. I don't think he was doing well through like half the debate. I don't. I was not impressed. He didn't really, plant his flag and say, I'm here, I'm the force to be reckoned with, here's why. And he wasn't really aggressive, and he wasn't really hitting his stride where he kind of fires off his talking points, which get the rabid applause and whatnot. So I don't think he was doing well for the first half of the debate. Now, thank goodness, towards the end of the debate, he put the burners on, and he went to work, and he was Bernie. And he obliterated Joe Biden on foreign policy. But Bernie's best moment of the night was actually his closing statement. Because in his closing statement, he really let everybody know what's up. And he was like, listen, all these people on stage, they're good people, they're lovely people, I like them, but you got to ask yourself a question. Why is it that every time there are standard politicians in front of you and they make these promises, nothing ever changes? Well, it's time for the real change. It's time for the political revolution. I'm the only guy who's going to take on Wall Street. I'm the only guy who's going to take on the military-industrial complex. I'm the only one who's really going to stand up to these powerful forces. So by the end, I was like, yes, get him, Bernie. And you just have to hope that everybody who was watching the debate was hanging in there till the end, because if they just watched the first half, they'll think Bernie got obliterated. So overall, he is a winner, but it's not a Mortal Kombat flawless victory. I wish it was. I wish I could give you guys that news right now, but I can't give you that news right now. Now, I think the biggest winner of the night, and it pains me to say this, but it really struck me as the case. Even though I don't like her, Kamala Harris won. Because Kamala Harris, all night, was on her game. She commanded attention in a way that was impressive. It was like there was one moment where there was a lot of like sloppiness and talking over each other in the debate that was happening all over the place, and it really was a mess. But there were a few instances where like Kamala would interject at just the right moment. Like her timing was perfect all night. She would interject at just the right moment and be like, the American people don't want to see a food fight. They want to hear how we're going to put food on their tables. which is an overplanned line, and I hear you on that, but it was delivered properly, where it got like a big applause in the audience, and this was the whole night. She tried to basically come across as like, I'm the adult in the room, but also I'm actually going to pretend like I'm like Bernie Sanders, which she did. She clearly is doing what Kirsten Gillibrand is doing. Listen, there's a bunch of different kinds of politicians. Some of the politicians are so stupid, like Hickenlooper, that he actually thinks like, ooh, centrism will win. And John Delaney, oh, centrism is wonderful. They are so dead and gone and irrelevant that it's laughable. Then there's other candidates who are centrists, but they're smart enough to lie and act like they're like Bernie because it's a populist anti-establishment era. Kamala Harris is doing that. She's walking that tightrope. She's acting like she's super progressive. And while she is a centrist, her record is very centrist, and she just did a great job. Honestly, the moment that everybody's talking about today, and they will continue to talk about from this debate, is when Kamala Harris ended Joe Biden's career. She ended his campaign, 100%. And it happened because he worked with segregationists and bragged about working with segregationists. And she basically came out and said, you work with segregationists. And by the way, at the time, I was part of like the second class to be desegregated where I was in California or something like that. And, you know, it personally affected me. And the way she delivered it was just, everybody was like, damn, he's fallen and he can't get up. So I really think she won. She tried to sound progressive, tried to sound like Bernie, while also distinguishing herself from Bernie. So I don't believe her. I think she's full of shit. I think she is a centrist, but I think she had the best debate performance. And I'm going to keep it real with you guys. As of right now, I'm a little shook. Because I think the race has been narrowed down quite a bit. I think that we're really having a conversation now about between Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, and maybe at the fringes, Buttigieg, and then maybe one other, okay? But really, I think Kamala is the one who's going to make the strongest run at this thing. And if you're a Bernie person, we need to do everything we can to recognize that threat and fight back politically accordingly. So that's my breakdown of this debate. There were some surprises. Like I said, Yang did a lot worse than expected, although he says his mic was cut. Hickenlooper performed shitty as expected. Swalwell was the second worst. Biden was the worst. Williamson and Gillibrand, not up or down, just kind of coasting. And then the winners are Buttigieg, Bernie, and Kamala. Let me know what you think about what happened last night.